Hello, Mr. Humble. I was hoping we could catch up on your student Brock and his behaviors in class. Together, I think we could come up with a great behavior plan that will make him more successful in the classroom. I believe this will help the overall census in your class and help you concentrate as well.
I think that would be a great idea. Brock is starting to become a distractor in the classroom, and I'm running out of strategies that will minimize his behaviors.
Can you tell me some things about Brock, maybe some strengths he plays out?
Brock has a very strong personality, an assertive personality, but can still be very sweet.
What difficulties are you seeing in and out of the classroom?
The behaviors that are most concerning for me is the disruption for my class is when Brock is up and out of his seat, having physical aggression towards other students, and when he refuses to do classwork.
I understand how these behaviors could be distracting in your classroom. Is there a time we could meet that we could discuss Brock a little more in depth?
Sure, I'm free during my prep period next week, if we could meet.
Sounds good. I'll see you then. Indirect data collection is important because it gets to know how Brock interacts with others on a daily basis. So Brock likes to feel in control. He is often non-compliant when asked to do tasks by the teacher, like directions and requests. Brock's home life isn't the best, and he is currently in foster care due to his mother being in jail. The direct data represents very specific collections of data. These data points are collected through behavioral observations and anecdotal data. Direct data is important because it's collected by the behavior coach, who is specifically trained in that area. During observation, the anecdotal data showed that Brock's engagement decreased in activities that didn't interest him. The data showed that Brock was not engaged around 50% of the time. The behavior seems to occur when he is asked to do something he doesn't want to do, which results with him being non-compliant. Throughout the week, it seemed like frustration levels would only increase. During observation time, he was frequently non-compliant about every 15 minutes. It was clear that if Brock was not interested, he was not engaged. Consequences resulted in Brock receiving negative attention but a sense of control. The most popular punishments result in lost free time or timeout. The data showed that these behaviors only cause behaviors to escalate, causing more incidents.
The mid-rate shows the most accurate data baseline from where the students started out. For the target baseline, Brock started where the refusals occurred for the next 15 days. On the fourth day, Brock's mid-rate occurred at 22 refusals. Our graph here shows the number of refusals versus the days on the X and Y axis, starting our trend line on the fourth day. It would follow downward to day 15. The replacement behavior's mid-rate would be 40% engagement.
It seems like we have some great data to go off of. I think we should start making behavior goals. Let's start with our target rate. I feel like 2 weeks would be a good time frame to see if our intervention is working. What do you think?
I think 2 weeks would be a great start. I would really like to lower Brock's refusal rate. Over a 5-day period, the average was 14 per hour. Is this possible?
I think it's possible to lower these refusals, but we need to remember that this trial is only 2 weeks long.
Would lowering it 50% be attainable? 7 refusals per hour? That seems realistic, right?
That seems realistic to me. With splitting the refusals in half, that leaves us at our goal to be 7 or less refusals per hour. This seems attainable. Now with replacement behavior, let's look at the engagement data you've collected. Keeping it consistent with our other goal, I think 2 weeks would be supplement. With engagement, do you have a certain percentage you're looking towards for engagement with Brock?
I would hope for 100%, but I know that isn't reasonable. From my data previously collected, it stated that Brock was engaged 50% of the time. Would it be reasonable to state our goal at 70% engagement?
I believe so. This will give a reasonable explanation to Brock why interventions are being put in place. So our replacement behavior goal is at the end of 2 weeks, Brock's engagement will be at 70%. I also think it would be a good idea to get a 4-point decision-making rule. It might sound a little bit complicated, but it's pretty simple, as I'll explain. So with our 4-point decision-making rule needs to take place over a minimum of our 2 weeks, and we'll need to have at least 8 data points during that 2-week span. If we get 4 data points above the aim line, we'll want to raise the goal, because that is a sign we can get better results than we anticipated. And if we get 4 data points below the aim, we will want to change our intervention because that's a pretty clear indicator that it's not working.
Wow, that all makes a whole lot of sense to me. I never thought us teachers would be this into data like this, but you are right. That's not too complicated to wrap my head around.
Indeed. Now let's talk strategy for a little bit. Our solutions don't have to be long or complicated either. Based on what you've told me, I have a couple suggestions for the short term. Are you familiar with antiseptic bouncing?
You know, it sounds really familiar, and I definitely know we talked about it when I was in college, but I could not tell you for sure. Could you remind me?
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. Antiseptic bouncing is a strategy where Brock would self-monitor himself. He'd be monitoring when he is becoming upset and feels like he needs a break from the situation in order to become less disruptive in the classroom. He can then remove himself to an area that you two can work out ahead of time. This allows the class to keep on course and allows Brock to get to a safe place, both mentally and physically.
That sounds like a great idea. I'm all for that.
Before we agree on that, I want to bounce off one more idea off you for the short term. This one's also pretty simple. It's simply teacher interaction. All you do is plan the time during the day. It could be before math, after lunch, after getting back from PE, any time that you can make that one-on-one interaction with Brock and just talk to him. The idea here is building a relationship and making him feel valued and important. So what are you thinking? You know Brock better than I do.
I think the first choice of antiseptic bouncing is the strategy I'm going to make a plan for. Brock could really benefit from being able to remove himself from situations, and making the plan with him could give him a sense of ownership in our plan. And that could almost be a side effect that ends up helping a lot because he feels like he's in control to a certain degree. I can certainly make the teacher interaction happen too, though. There's a little less planning with that, and I think it'd help Brock a lot too.
Great. Short-term strategies can be very effective, but if we want to see the results we want to implement a long-term strategy as well. We know Brock likes to be in control, so I would suggest the strategy of offering choices. It can be during any time period of the day. What's great about this strategy is not about something that has to be blatantly obvious. Offering choices is actually a part of supporting universal design for learning. This could give Brock the chance to feel in charge of learning, as we know is ultimately what he is seeking.
Wow, that sounds great. I never thought of that as a strategy, but that seems like a great idea, especially since it could actually be helpful for the rest of the students in the class as well.
Okay, so we're going to model these strategies quick just so we're on the same page and how they work. For our short-term strategy, I'm going to be Brock since it is a self-monitoring strategy. No, you're going to be Brock and I'll watch. I'm going to vocalize thoughts in Brock's head for this part. This math content is starting to bother me. I don't want to do this stuff. How does he expect us to get it? Okay, I'm starting to get a little bit upset. I'm going to go for a walk to the lunchroom and back like Mr. Humble and I planned when I get upset.
Gotcha. I can definitely model that for Brock and create a plan for how he can remove himself. What if Brock is self-conscious about removing himself?
That is a real possibility. There are a couple options you can do if that happens. You can move him to the seat near the door so he can sneak out quietly and be unnoticed, or you could plan for him just to go to the bathroom pass as he leaves and nobody thinks anything of it. Ultimately, you're going to want to be a good listener and take his concerns when you make this plan to work and find a solution that helps Brock the most.
That makes sense. One more question. What if I get questions from staff about Brock walking around the halls if it ends up being a semi-frequent thing?
That's a good question, too. Simply explain that as part of a behavior intervention plan and that unless he is misbehaving in the halls, just to walk by and say hi.
Great. I feel pretty good about this short-term strategy.
Good. Okay, now to help model the long-term strategy, I want you to be Brock, and let's say he doesn't like what we're writing in class for the scenario.
Yep, got it. Okay. Mr. Humble, I don't want to write about Frederick Douglass. He's boring and really old.
Okay, Brock, perhaps there are some other civil rights figures you could write about. I know you like baseball a lot. Would you like to write about Jackie Robinson and how he helped the civil rights movement?
Yes, that sounds much better.
So something like that, offering choices that still serve the purpose of the class content while catering to what Brock can help with.
What if I can't find anything in the moment?
That's where you'd want to have some choices planned out in your lesson plan. Maybe you know Brock better than I do, so you know what choices will be necessary for him. It's all about planning ahead and having choices planned out ahead of time.
Awesome. I can do that for sure.
How about I come back in a week or so to see how these strategies are worked into your classes and your lesson plans. I'll come observe then. Does that sound good to you?
Yep, that sounds great. I'll let you know if I have any other issues or further questions.
1 week later. Okay, Mr. Humble, let's get to it. I just want to say right away that you did a great job overall. Good work. Now let's get to the details. I noticed that you moved Brock close to the door so he could sneak out and walk when he needed to remove himself. It was subtle, but based on what happened, it seemed like his returning was effective.
Quick question before we keep going. I can't tell if I'm biased or not, but did the other students seem distracted at any point when he was leaving?
Some students did turn when he saw that they were leaving the room, but that was the end of the distraction. It was very short. Now, your long-term strategy was also prevalent during the period I observed. You gave not only Brock, but the whole class choices 2 times that I noticed. They had to choose who they wrote about for the first 15 minutes instead of having them all write about the same person. And you also gave them the choice of doing their writing with pen and paper, on a mini whiteboard, or on their Chromebook. Brock didn't show any visible signs of being pleased, but from what we've discussed, if he was displeased, he would have shown it in some way. You did really great with this strategy.
Thanks. I just have one more question in regards to this. What if I really don't want there to be choices for the whole class? I mean, not always, just some specific lessons. It makes it easier on the teacher if we're almost all doing the same thing.
Right. So if it's a situation like that you're describing, you could talk with Brock before and discuss possible options for him. This way it can be planned out and in place before class begins, and it wouldn't be a distraction during the actual lesson.
Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense.
I'll check in a couple more times over the next 2 weeks to see how it's going. If you have any issues or want to meet again to discuss the plan, just let me know. I'm here to help you.
Will do. Thanks again.
Brock was able to decrease refusals the past 2 weeks. He was refusing less, as we can see on the tread line here. Since Brock was able to reach his goal, we need to make a new one. Since we cut down his refusals to half, we should do something similar for around this time. Let's say 4 refusals will be our new goal. Unfortunately, Brock's participation did not increase as much as we hoped. For our long-term goal, I think we should focus on increasing Brock's participation in the classroom. I think belief statements would help Brock achieve this goal. Having belief statements that you two could create together will help Brock understand what you expect from him, as well as a visual as what he can look at.